TuskegeeVirtual.com.
CP time. I don't like to be on CP time, but I'm of course, some of you all know I'm right near Thornton. I grew up in this community. I know all the rivers and streams and all around here. I can take you right down here. There's a bridge here that was built in 1908 that we've forgotten about. Well, the Tuskegee Airmen actually used to fly under the bridge. Yeah, it's that high. It's about 1,000 yards from here. But I learned how to swim down here in this Euphrates Creek. I can remember when I was younger than those guys of freshwater oysters of mussels, me and my cousin back there, that large. And they probably, as he said last night, they probably still in there. We just hadn't been in there. We're going to say that today we're going to have some positive lecture, informational by my great friend and brother, Kerry Davis, from the creator, executive director, all rolled up in one of African Americans Ain't African. And I just want to share, I followed Kerry almost a year before I contacted him because I was checking him out, you know, and I'm reading the information that what he's putting out, and I'm researching too, because I always, hey, I've been on this journey of who we are. Why are we second-class citizens? Why do we take less? Why are what? You know, and I'm gonna say it because I'm not afraid of the free. Because you can believe in what you want to believe in, but the truth, when you look at the facts, the truth speak for themselves. I love all people, Kerry. I do. I think that's one of my weaknesses. If I had to say a weakness, because of my care for people. But our people, these colored people, these Negro people, these African American people, you know, this ain't about race, it's about humanity. It's about telling the truth. Who are we? And that's why I contact you, and you know, it's one thing, once I put my hand in it, or once I do it, I'm gonna see it through the end. And I thank you for coming. Thank you, Dr. Skewer, for coming. Thank you for, Tuskegee Virtual, Rashad and Patrick, and you know, a lot of people are afraid to even come out here, I feel. Because they're afraid of the information. Because sometimes it's ugly and it's real uncomfortable. But we got to deal with it. A good friend of mine, you'll meet him. He's the director of Tuskegee University Bioethics Center. Dr. Warren, he said one time, this shook my spirit. He said, we got to stop rapping and come to some positive dialogue. Stop, you know, you can put us in the room somewhere, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do this, but you put us in the room, everybody got their own opinion. But it ain't worth for nothing. We got to have one message. I don't care if you like Buddha, I don't care if you Jesus, I don't care. But we ought to love one another because it's the right thing to do.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
sir.
And we got a lot of people out here who don't like people that look like me and you. So it's time for us, and I know Dr. Skewer has been doing it up there at Tuskegee University. You know, I'm a grassroots guy. I love to be in the fields and the stream, talking to the people. But with that said, I thank you all for coming out. We're going to have a session at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whatever it takes, because we're going to have to address for these young kids. We might not see it like integration. You know, my wife asked me, say, you and Kerry didn't go down to Selma? No, because it was that time. I don't have anything against it, but that was that time, and that time did not work for this time. So we got to address it. But anyway, Kerry will tell you about herself. That's Kerry Davis. We're working closely. We'll be traveling around the country, talking to anybody who want to hear. Huh? Not arguing, dialogue, coming up with some answers. Coming up with some situations and making some change. When I was a Christian preacher, my favorite thing was, if you're going in the wrong direction, change directions. So if people think we're going in the right direction, they wrong. Very wrong. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. What I want to do today, I want to make it to the young males, because that's who I was all you guys' age at one time. So what I want to say is directly to you, because you guys live with your moms now, right? Moms. In a few years, you're going to be out there on your own in this world. And for us, if you're dumb, it's not a good place to be. So this is for you, and hopefully it give you a better way to look at yourself to see how you fit in, because this is yours. And once you see it, I think it'll help. My name is Kerry Davis. I come from a town called Los Angeles, California. And this is where I came up with African Americans in Los Angeles, because I saw what was happening. My aunt was the first female mayor of a major city in California called Compton, California, Doris Davis. When she was the mayor of that city, it was 80% black. The term African American wasn't used at the time. The term at that time was black or Negro. It was 80% black. So I grew up through there, and over the years, I watched it go from black to totally Hispanic. What happened? How come everywhere we go, we don't build nothing, just other people come through and kick you out of there like you don't count? You're going to learn that today. Why? Now, Compton is 80% Mexican. I had a cousin who just got out of jail. He was in jail for 30 years. And he comes home and he says, what happened to all the people? What happened to all the black folks? They're dead. Dead? What you mean? Well, you wanted to sell crack to each other. You wanted to turn each other into zombies. You wanted to shoot each other so you can buy some Nikes. You want to abort every time you create a baby. You want to abort it. It's called genocide. He's in jail 30 years. Really retarded kind of cat. Like most of us are, because we don't think. We're told certain things without an explanation. Santa Claus. Here, that's an example, a perfect example. We're told about Santa Claus when we're kids. Our parents tell us this. They lie to us. But when you ask a question, well, how come Santa Claus's clothes never get dirty? In California, they put cotton on their roof and on their grass so they can simulate snow. California's a desert. It doesn't snow there. But the mental capacity that we're in will do anything to keep the charade going. When I was in school, I went to public school. And I don't know why we're still trying to pretend like that's a good thing for our children, when we know we went there and we didn't learn a thing. Down here in the Southeast is some of the worst education in the world. But we keep acting like everything is okay. And watching our children get blown away in the streets. And then doing the same thing we've been doing for the same 100 years. Jesus is going to save us. It ain't happening like that. And we should know better than that now. We're getting wiped out. Your president is about to let millions of immigrants come in here. What does that mean for us? You see the immigrants coming out. I live in a place called Birmingham, Alabama now. There's more Mexican restaurants than black restaurants. Why is that? How come black men in the South don't control none of the mining, none of the timber, none of the waterways, none of the lakes and rivers? This is what you guys are going to have to do. When I want fish, I'm going to have to come to you. When I want wood to build my house, where's our Home Depots? These are questions you're going to have to start answering, because you're going to have to be the ones who are doing it. Because brothers of my generation, we don't do that. We watch sports. We play games. we chase women. We like to skate through life. We're not trying to build anything. When we get together to have some communication, all we want to do is end up fighting because we don't want to confront what's out there in front of us. And we have a job to do, males and females. I'm not one of those cats. We are one people, and we are getting smashed. I'm in college. I'm in a community college, and I asked the teacher taking African American studies. We're talking, and she said, "You have a question." And in Los Angeles, it's a real fake city. Nothing's really real. Everything is Hollywoodish. It's how you look. It's not what kind of person you are. It's how you look. What you got? I asked the teacher one day, I'm like, just a simple question. And her answer let me know that she was lying. I said, where are all the ships that brought all these slaves over here? She put me out the class. Simple question. By that time, I had been through enough school to know that if a teacher got mad at you, she didn't know what she was talking about. So I started to dig. I started to ask brothers in the Navy, you in the Navy, have you ever crossed the Atlantic? Yeah, several times. Where'd you cross from? South Africa to Brazil, Brazil back to Nigeria, Nigeria to back to Virginia. In your estimation, sir, is it possible for a ship carrying 400 people chained up? And when I show you the pictures, you're going to be like, because they just tell us stuff. We don't question, they just tell us and we just accept it. When I show you these pictures, you're going to be like, wow. Sir, is it possible for a ship carrying 400 men to cross the Atlantic Ocean? You're like, no. The waves are too rough, too much weight, it could never happen. I still didn't believe them because that's what I was inculcated with. You came from Africa, you roots. They had a story called Roots when I was your age, come out. Dumbest story ever. This is how most of us believe that we come from, Africa. He said, no, just get a picture, and I'm gonna show you this today, of somebody in the Atlantic, and you will see the wave. It's impossible. Another thing I wanted to know, if this big old venture were bringing slaves over here to America, it sounds like it's a major business. Did they take 6 months off during hurricane season? What? Did they take 6 months off? Because 6 months during the year is hurricane season. The Atlantic is rough. These are the questions that we don't ask. We're trained like dogs. This is what it is. This is what you're going to do, and do it. When we don't fit to those terms or those whatever they're telling us, now we're labeled niggas, thugs, whatever. We are in captivity right now. This is black men don't run. Everything black men have to do, they have to do what? Ask the white man if it's okay. Own your own land. That's why we're slaves today. Now, I'm going to show it to you. And then, all your questions, give them to me, but I'm going to ask some questions back. And when I ask the questions back, I don't want that Negro answer. Well, just like we communicating, everything we want to know should be at our fingertips. So I'm going to share some stuff with you right now. Some of the stuff you may have seen before, some of the stuff you may have not asked questions. But if this don't, my information, I give the 13 to 14-year-old get it. These are kids, they get it. What they bring back when they get this stuff blows me away. We gotta stop lying to our kids. We gotta stop. So let's get started. Since we down here in the South, I like to start. Martin Luther King is really big down here. And in 1963, Martin Luther King gave us I Have a Dream speech. I'm sure you've heard it, but I would suggest that you read the whole speech because I'm just going to take it from my point of view. I came from a place called Los Angeles. All they do is give us fluff to keep us stupid. If you ever go to Los Angeles, the Negroes there are some of the biggest zombies you'll see in your life. All they're trying to do is give them camera. All they're trying to do is entertain. That's what we do, sing and dance. Martin Luther King gave a speech, I Have a Dream. In LA, when they play the speech, they only play the last verb, the last one day, black boys, black girls walking, holding hands, free at last, free at last. That's all we hear. The speech is 17 minutes. When you read the first part of the speech, this is what you get. And this is what I mean about us now. We're in 2015. This speech was over 50 years ago. If we have all this knowledge, if we have all this education, if we have all this spiritual fortitude, how come we miss stuff like this? This is what Martin Luther King said in his I Have a Dream speech. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. Now, what Martin Luther King was saying, and I'm going to show you how twisted we are. When he says 100 years later, because this was the civil rights era of 1963, but we also had another civil rights. There's another civil rights 100 years prior, 1863. It was called Reconstruction. So what had happened was, and there's an old saying, you hear Malcolm X say it sometime, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. So they had a civil rights era 100 years ago. This when brothers was in the Senate. See, a lot of people don't know black men were voting before white women. We've been helping in our own enslavement for a long time. But see, you get put in little positions to keep the rest of us out, and that's how a lot of us stay in our places. So you had a civil rights era 100 years before Martin Luther King. What happened? There was something called Black Friday where the stock market crashed. And if you look at those times and see how your folks was living, they was living large. Why? Because they were indigenous people. Most of them wasn't living in the cities then. They were living in places like this. That's why Tuskegee University is very important because of what that over there. I mean, Tuskegee University used to be the biggest brick manufacturer in the Southeast. How come we don't do that now, giving these little young brothers and sisters something to do? We're supposed to have been so far. They said Tuskegee University used to supply its own electricity. How come we're not taking that technology that was back then and upgrading it now when we're doing solar panels so our young people can have something to do? Why isn't the thought in our academia like that? Why aren't we talking about that in our churches so our children can have something to do? These are the questions you guys are going to have to ask. Now, I know a lot of times you guys get upset because you act like nobody understands where you're coming from. I understand. Because just like you, we'll show you what you do when you get into things and how you just transform this place into a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Plus, the people that take it from you, they're greedy. They're just that's like me coming and emptying your pockets and then you behind me saying, give me my stuff back. That's the black man in America today. Begging other men to do what he can do. That's why it's important that we always hate each other. That's why it's important that we Christians and Muslims and Africans break them down on your own land. And I'm going to show you this is your stuff. There's not going to be no doubt about it. That was Martin Luther King. He's telling you right now, the Negro finds himself exiled in his own land. What does that mean? What does it mean? Now they got Martin Luther King streets in every city. They have statues of him everywhere. What does it mean when that man says the Negro finds himself in exile in his own land? It means that you didn't come over here on no ship. That's what that means. So, that's Martin Luther King. Another cat that was very instrumental in your history was a cat named Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass came up with he had a speech called The Folly of Colonization. Can't find it right now. He came up with a speech called The Folly of Colonization. Back in the 1800s, they was trying to send a lot of us to Africa to clear us from the land. Frederick Douglass made a speech in Folly of Colonization showing them how dumb that idea was, showing how much that would cost to do that, and why would you take the people from here and put them in a place where, in a foreign place? This is Frederick Douglass. The information's out there. Our problem is that we just don't like information. We like to be entertained. We like to sing and dance. You heard of, what's the sister name who, we were talking about Selma earlier, the sister name who wouldn't get off the bus? Rosa Parks. Did you know, you ever heard of a lady named Sojourner Truth? Her story was the same thing, but back in the 1800s, because she wouldn't do the same thing on a train. Sojourner Truth was told to get off of a train, go in the back of the train, or wherever the black people in that day, and she said, I'm not doing it. Same thing. History repeats itself. We just don't know it because we don't question. We don't tell the truth. We always playing and lying and confusing ourselves. Alex Haley. You guys are young. When I was a kid, a TV show came out called Roots. This is how most of us, this is when the term, about 10 years later after Roots, the term African American became popular. Roots was a story. This cat wrote this story. Let me tell you about Alex Haley. Are you guys familiar with a guy named Malcolm X? Alex Haley came on the scene. He did an autobiography on a brother named Malcolm X. Malcolm X was a thug brother who turned himself around and became an international figure. Beautiful orator, could speak to anybody. And he started to wake people up on the political implications of what were going on. He was kind of like the arch nemesis of Martin Luther King for a minute. But if you ever see a picture of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King shaking hands, that's when Martin Luther King started to change. And that's what we all got to do. We brothers, man. We should have asked the question, Alex Haley, there was a book that came out in the 60s called The Autobiography of Malcolm X. And an autobiography is a story about your life. When Alex Haley started writing that story, Malcolm X was like 35, 36 years old. What man writes a story about his life when he's 35 or 36 and he's not near the end of his life? Alex Haley was Navy intelligence. He was sent in there to break up the Nation of Islam. So, a few years later, he comes out with this story called Roots. Roots is about this man named Kunta Kinte that comes from Africa, and he builds his family and life over here. The only problem with that story is that it was plagiarized. Alex Haley stole that story from a man named Harold Corlander, who was writing about some Africans. He made the story up live, that show still comes on today. Every Christmas they play Roots. Back to back to back to back to back. Why? To disconnect you from your ancestral homeland. See, if you don't know who you are, when the foreigners come over here, you see all these Asians coming over, you see all these Arabs coming over to take all your money out of your community, that's supposed to be what you're doing. We're supposed to be trading with each other. Arabs don't buy from you. Asians don't purchase from you. Why do we take on those casinos that we're talking about? Why are we the ones still up in there giving the people our money? Where's your casinos? Huh? How come we don't have that stuff? How come brothers, you young men, how come brothers don't make cars? How come brothers don't have their own bus line? The Montgomery boycott should have showed you a whole bunch of stuff. How come we don't take what we learned from there and update it to today and make it better for ourselves? You're about to find out. Roots is a main story in the African American lexicon. Somebody comes tells us stories, we don't question it, we don't debate them, we just believe whatever they say. He was sued for $650,000 and had to publicly apologize in court. But what he did, he sent millions of us on this trip that we from Africa. Africans don't claim you. Africans don't claim you. When you see the story that they told you, when you see how dumb it is, you're gonna trip. Okay? African American? Anybody? What's an African American? What's an African? What does the term African mean? Let's do it different. What does the term black mean? That's been in use longer than African American. What does the term black mean? We're trained much like dogs. You tell a dog to sit. Sit. The dog eventually learns that when you say sit, it means to sit down. If you tell the dog to come in and have a seat, he'll look at you like you're crazy because he's never heard that before. So we get these words and these terms that we use, we don't know what they mean. That's why when I said, what does African mean? Nobody knew. That's how we're trained. Here's the term black. And check it out and see if this doesn't apply to us in this system that we live in. This is the etymology of the word black. So when you find the word, you want to find out who made the word up, what people invented that word, why did they invent it, what were they going through in their history when they invented it, what were they going through and what did that word mean to them? Black. So it's an adjective. What's an adjective? Isn't an adjective something used to describe a thing? What's an adjective? So off the bat, you're not even a human with this word. You're a thing, property. That's how we're looked at in American society today. That's why foreigners can come over here and set up right in your community. They won't live with you. They'll come in and take all of your economic resources out of it. Why? Why? Are we dumb? We don't know how to set up our own stores. We don't know how to make our own weaves. We don't know how to do feet. Why are poor people coming from Asia? They coming from all over the world to come right here to Tuskegee, Alabama. And they getting paid. You employ them. You can't employ yourself, but you employ foreigners. How do you employ foreigners? Because you go support their businesses. Do you support your own? No. You don't do that. Why is there more Mexican restaurants in the South than black restaurants? These are questions we should be asking. Our elders don't want to talk about it. When you bring it up to them, they will tell you to get out their face. Trust me. How come we don't have a chain of restaurants around here like Cracker Barrel? So when our children get out of school and they're in high school, they can have something to do. These are the questions not only you're going to have to ask, but your kids going to have to ask. Because we cannot stay in the state that we're living now. You won't have grandkids. The way we're going now, the word out is genocide. To kill you out. That's why these brothers out here getting shot and killed your ages, you really don't have a problem. We don't really have a problem with it. That's why it keeps going on and on and on. Why are our children doing the things that they do now? Why are you the target? So the definition of black is pale. The definition of black and bleach is the same word. All it does means to black you out. So the term black came in when the Europeans came over and they saw the people here. And look at the word that they were using. Go read them books and stuff from the 16 and 17 and 1800s. They're talking about you. Black means just redact. Black them out. So then they blacked you out. And then they came up with names like Cherokee, Choctaw. These aren't the names that you were calling yourselves. These are the names that they start to name you so they can put you in a box so they can control you. You see at the fifth line up, black, bleak, and bleach are all radically one word. The primary sense seems to be pale, wan, or sour. It doesn't mean what we think it means. We think black power. Black power means bleached out power. It doesn't mean what we think it means. It's just a control mechanism used to control us. That's why the Black Panther Party was a failure from the beginning. It was CIA set up from the jump. But we jumped behind it, and young men your age were wiped out. Still in jail today. And those people that led it, the Angela Davises, all of them have got professorships and book sales. One brother's even in the Congress in the United States, the brother from Chicago. It was the Black Panther Party was used to get in our communities and infiltrate them. And they did a wonderful job because we believed, we didn't know, we just believed certain things. So the term black, all the term black is used for is to erase you out, to make you think that you don't count. And when other people use it, it does that. But when we use it upon ourselves, because when I was in school, if you were called black, there was a fight. If somebody said, your mama's black, there was a fight. Black was a term. Then, after Roots came out, the term African became important. We started using this term African American. We'll get into that in a minute. What I want to do, I want to use an analogy. As we go through this, I want to use an analogy of a cheating spouse. You at home, your spouse come home smelling of perfume or cologne, lipstick on his collar or her collar, however it rolls. What's the first thing that the spouse who's been at home does? What's the first thing they do? They begin to ask the other spouse questions. When the other spouse can't answer questions, that's when the spouse who's been cheated on knows that you're lying. And one of the things that we don't do, but we're going to do this today, I'm just going to ask you some simple questions. One of the things that we don't do, we don't question anything. Whatever they tell us, that's what we go with. And that's how we stay in the trouble we're in, because we don't never do what's best for us. We always do what's best for other people. That's what an African American does. The African American never looks out for herself. The African American will look out for people from Thailand before they look out for themselves. And that's why there's no money circulating in our community, because all our money goes to other people, other foreigners. I'm going to show you some images. These are some images that I want you to see. These are images back in the day when when you go to read the newspapers back in the 17 and 1800s, these are the images that they were putting out back then. Now remember, they didn't have TV back then, so they did a lot of drawing. Tell me who these people are. This picture right here is very important. Pull this up sometime. This picture is called The Reconciliation Between Britannia and Her Daughter America. If you look at the picture, you'll see these are different European countries you see they're trying to pull at America. Different French, Dutch, Portuguese, French people over there. They're trying to pull at this woman who is America. Who is that? Who does that woman look like? She don't look like she can be your mama, your aunt, your grandma. Is she an African? Why is it saying the reconciliation between Britannia, that's the Queen of England, and that's America right there? What are those feathers in her hair? What do they symbolize? You're going to see a lot of feathers. And you're going to see a lot of people who look like you with feathers. Who is that? And with all this education we got, how come this isn't taught to our daughters? Look at this woman. Just look at the image. When you look at the image, look this image up and read everything that you see here. Who is that? Look at her hips. Look at her hair. Who is that? That's the symbolization of America. Your mamas, your grandmamas. That's where you come from. That woman isn't an African. The reconciliation between Britannia and her daughter America. Why are white people so hell-bent on taking the red-skinned head off the helmet, and you don't hear nothing from you? This brother right here look just like you.
Handsome.
That's a red, your skin is not red. Here's another, but this shirt is black. Have you ever seen somebody this color? Never. How come you don't hear our mouths on that? How come white folks, the white Indians, we're gonna get into them in a minute too. Why are they saying, take the red skin head down? That's offensive. This is one of the most recognizable images in the world. When you start to go out of the country, and please do that, they're going to tell you, you're Indians from America. When you go to Europe, they know who you are. Just because you don't know who you are, other people know who you are. And all these foreigners coming over here, setting up on top of you, they know exactly who you are. They know. Hopefully you don't know, and we don't know. We don't care. So that's why as young men, you're going to have to learn as much as you can. Do not try to be ignorant around here at this certain, in these what's coming up in America now, especially after this cat Obama get out of office, you cannot afford to be a dummy. And I realize that with most of the brothers you see in front of you, you cannot afford to be dumb. Learn as much as you can. Learn about who you're, and the females. The bloodline goes through the females. I know we live in a Christian society where it say it comes through the male. Males don't give birth to children. Females do. That's one of the reasons that we lose too. We look at ourselves as no man passes through this planet without first coming through his mother. These are things that should be pumped into our head. But we're taught to disrespect our mothers. And when you do that, you know what's coming after that, right? All these foreigners can come take your stuff. Because if you disrespect their woman, guess what they're going to do to you? They're going to kill you. They don't play that. We just follow you along, dog our women out, and think you're going to have something. Well, yeah, you might, because your mama could have aborted you. It's tough for sisters in America. That's why a lot of sisters divide themselves today, because it's easier. They don't have to take care of no kids. They can just take care of themselves and get on with their life. But the females that have children, they're very special because they didn't have to do it, especially living in the conditions they're living in. Watch the redskin helmet. Who is that? That's you. We are so accustomed to being black, we can't even see ourselves in the images that they show us. Who is that? I want to blow this up because this is my favorite right here. I'll just share this with you. This piece right here is called Indian. Come on, y'all. This piece right here is called Indian Warrior Entering His Wigwam with a Scalp. Can you see that? I know it's probably not big enough. I'll give it to you one more. Here.
What's the name of it again?
Indian Warrior Entering His Wigwam with a Scalp. What are you doing? Who is that? That's an African? And again, we have nothing against Africans. They getting dogged out over there probably worse than we are here. But you have to ask the question, why are all of them fleeing over here? That's one thing about us. You don't never really see us going out and fleeing and living in other places. Why are all these immigrants coming over here? Why are Africans coming over here? If Africa is the major continent, if Africa is the richest continent on the planet, why are their sons and daughters fleeing, coming to Europe and coming to America? These are some of the questions you should be asking them when you talk to them and communicating with them. Why are they leaving their country? Why are they leaving where all mankind supposedly sprang from? Why are all the children running away? When you ask those questions, the answers they give you will let you know you're not African. None of us look like Africans. Indian warrior leaving his wigwam with a scalp. Who was that brother? Now, when I show these pictures, a lot of people be like, well, their hair doesn't look like, they'll go ahead and say the picture looks like it. They can agree with the picture, but they'll say the hair, their hair. Well, Our hair isn't like that. Well, where does our hair out? What is our hair is nappy. It's not nappy. Your hair is dry. Why is your hair dry? Because you don't live in your environment. You don't live in your habitat. Other people have came in and built their habitats, and you went in there and wanted to fight around in their habitat. Where's your habitat? You can't feed yourself. You can't make your own clothes now. You used to make shoes. What you doing now? These are the industries that other people came and took from you. The cotton industry was an industry that your mothers created. White people didn't bring cotton over here. This was something that you created. Now you don't make socks now. Other people come in and sell you whatever you need because we've lost the ability to do for ourselves. And we love it. We brag how bad we are on making other people money. We brag that we work for the government. Where's your stuff? Where's your empire? How come we don't build boats? How come we don't build boats that we can put out there and fish on in these rivers and lakes? These thoughts don't even enter our minds. Why? Because we're black. You're not supposed to think. And since somebody tells you not to think, you don't think. That's what we are today. This is the African American in 2015. Brothers don't make weapons. Brothers don't make tires. What are we doing as a group besides watching the game? And that's probably why a lot of people today the game is coming. I'm serious.
You said it.
This is a picture. One of the stories that are given to us, this is the slave trade. Check this out. They tell us that the Europeans came over here. Check this out. Spain and Portugal, the Pope told Spain and Portugal that you can go and conquer the world. And whatever you find, you split up and send the cash home. This is the story we're given about a slave trade. So Spain and Portugal go on this slave ship venture, and they're going to go down to Africa, kidnap all the slaves, bring them across the Atlantic, and sell them to themselves over here. Okay? So I told you earlier what the guy in the Navy said about boats crossing to the Atlantic. If you've ever been to Puerto Rico or down to the Caribbean, those waves aren't playing. It couldn't happen. So people were like, well, how did they get here? Have you ever heard of a place called Newfoundland? It's up in Nova Scotia, up by Canada. Newfoundland, New Amsterdam, New York, New Jersey, Nova Scotia, which is New Scotland. All they were doing, they didn't come across the Atlantic. That's a lie. Look at the northern part of any map, and this is the United Nations logo is the perfect. But here's America right here. Here's Europe right here. All they did was come across. If you ever seen that movie Titanic, how did the Titanic sink?
The iceberg.
Hit an iceberg. The further up north you have icebergs. If you ever seen a picture of an iceberg, the iceberg is at the tip is like that, but at the bottom it can be big as this room. The ice at the bottom of the iceberg calms the waters down. So that's how they came up through the north, Canada, New York, that way. How do you know? Because York is a place in England. That was old York. They came over here and named something New York. Jersey is a place in England. They came over here and named it New Jersey. This is our New Jersey. Then as they start going down the coast, they start naming it after the Lords, Baltimore, Virginia. They start naming it after the people back at home. They didn't come across the Atlantic. That's a lie. They came across the north, and when you look in Canada, when you start piecing it together, you'll see. When you start looking in Canada, they start getting to Canada, then they start coming down what's known as the Mississippi River. That's why you see a lot of French people up in Canada. And you have to ask yourself, well, if France is south of England, how did they get up in Canada? They just came across the north here. Came across the north. where you don't have to have the story of the Nina Pinta and Santa Maria. If you look at the story of how the first settlers came, they landed at Plymouth Rock. That's what they say. But when you start to look at the evidence and start looking at what they name things, then you'll get a better understanding of what's going on. Always look at how they name things. Because that's one thing that they do, they name things, and what did it have to do with you? And a lot of pictures that you'll see of the Indians, they look the same brothers up there in Boston, look just like you. Detroit, got a brother named King Detroit. Most of the places here in America are named after you. When you start seeing names like Tallahassee, and Tuskegee, those are words that the indigenous people over here were using. Not all of these words that we use are English words. That's why they call it American English. Because when they got with the people over here, the language that the people they were using over here, that's a word you'll hear a lot of people, that's an indigenous term. A lot of terms that you hear over here what indigenous people use, and they just meshed it in with the lexicon over here. Are there any questions so far? Yes, sir.
Kerry, go again about terminology and just the etymology. I know you might do that, especially about blacks and white young.
Yeah.
You know.
The words we use. Okay. What's a word, what's a slang word that young people use? Huh? Nigga. What's a nigga? Okay. You use the word nigga. But you've heard it used. Why is it used? Why do we call each other nigga? But if I called your mama nigga, you ain't gonna have that. Why do we use that word? Because it's a word that means you ain't nothing. You're not even a person. Matter of fact, that's the last word a lot of brothers heard before they were killed. It's a word that other people shows their disrespect towards you. Then we take that word and think it's going to work for us, and it doesn't. You just cast a spell on yourself. That's all words are, spells. If I told you, brother, you a good brother, I love you, you would feel some kind of way. I love you, nigga. You wouldn't act, it was like I never said nothing. That's why we have to communicate with each other. Simple. Don't have to use no big words. This stuff is simple. This transatlantic slave trade, this is why the transatlantic slave trade didn't happen. This is something that's simple, and you can figure this out. You can figure this out for yourself. Now this is in the Atlantic. This is a boat that's on the Atlantic Ocean. I'm gonna give you, this is how they say you got here. Check out these waves. That was on a yacht. 2 or 3 people on the yacht. Now imagine that. A ship with 400 people on there, riding those waves, 400 men weighing, 150 pounds apiece? Riding them waves, crashing down. And this is how they were supposed to get that. Now follow the story, because this is going to crack you up. So these brothers are doing that. These brothers are doing that. Check this out. I got to show you this picture, because this is how they said you came in. These are just other pictures of some of the indigenous people here. I have thousands of images. Matter of fact, I have so many images that I bet you $2 that you would go through these images and find somebody that looks just like somebody you know. You'll find somebody that looks like somebody you know or yourself, because I've done that before too. I share these images with people, and people put it right next to their face, and it's twins. You don't do that with Africans. Africans are a totally different people. They're totally different. Check this out. So you saw the wave. So you saw the wave right? Okay, check this out. So, this one. Let me share this word with you. Indigenous. This is a word you're going to have to learn how to do. Use. Indigenous. Anybody know what indigenous mean without looking? The so-called African American are the indigenous people of America. That's why you ever wonder why you always hear a story about China, Genghis Khan, the Great Wall of China. You hear the history of England and Europe. You hear the history of Africa and Egypt, but you never hear the history of America. Never! Before the Europeans come. You never ask that question? No, because we don't ask questions. We do what we're told to do. That's what an African American is. African Americans don't question anything. They do what they're told.